Well, welcome. I'm Dr. Tricia Seymour.
I'm Dr. Rusty Barrier. Welcome to our Wednesday talks here at Intelekia.
And this is the Advanced Metaphysics series. And tonight's talk is on
Empathic Living.
Yeah, right. And so this is just the flyer. So it says, do you feel overwhelmed by emotions, either by your own or other people's? How do you know if an emotion is yours or someone else's? And as a sensitive person, it's imperative to learn ways to stay internally balanced and sovereign.
And better know how to set boundaries.
Yeah, right, definitely.
So what
we're going to start by a centering exercise.
Oh, we are? Okay. Are you leading that or am I?
You can. Can you move that over a little bit? No, towards me. So that picks me
Which
up.
direction?
So it picks me up too. Me!
Honey, the microphone is out there.
Okay, alright. We're going to do a little centering exercise, okay? Alright, so just relax in your chair, get comfortable, close your eyes.
Take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And again, take a deep breath. And as you exhale, feel all the stress and tension of your day just drifting away. And again, as you breathe deeply, just relax. Feel the chair beneath you, the warmth of the air on your face, the sound of my voice. Become fully present here and now. Let all the concerns and worries you may have brought with you to this place today be set aside, knowing that you can pick them up later or not. But for now, just be here. Again, as you take a deep breath and exhale, allow yourself to come fully back into your body, allowing your eyes to open. Wiggle your fingers and toes.
Welcome back. So I wanted to start by talking about the difference between three different things. Empathy, highly sensitive people, and empaths. And that there is a little bit of a difference between each one. So empathy versus sympathy. So sympathy is actually when you've had the similar experience that somebody else has, and you can sympathize with them because you can feel what they're, you can understand
relate to what they're feeling.
And feel and know what they're feeling. So if you're sympathetic, you've probably had the similar experience. So we'll say grief. If you've lost a loved one, you can be sympathetic to somebody who's lost a loved one because you've lost a loved one. Empathetic is when you maybe haven't had the exact same experience as them, but you can kind of relate to what they're saying. So if I said, I have empathy for you, it means that I haven't quite had the same experience, but I can be compassionate towards you and the experience that you're having. So that's empathy.
I have a slightly different definition of those two words.
Oh, okay. Mine's from the dictionary.
I
looked them up to make sure I had them right.
Not saying hers are wrong, that's not my point. I just have a slightly different working definition. For me, sympathy is feeling for someone and their experience, and empathy is feeling with the person and their experience.
That's fine, that works too.
Yeah.
So there is something called a highly sensitive person. And highly sensitive people, there was a psychologist, and I'm sorry I didn't write her name down, so I'm not remembering it. She wrote many, many books on highly sensitive people, HSP, and what that is and how that looks like. And so it is somebody who might be sensitive to a lot of things. So they might be highly sensitive to light, to sound, to colors. They can be highly sensitive to emotions as well, but their sensitivity is more like, I'll say they are easily triggered by stuff.
And beyond just easily triggered, it's actually more external events, right? I'll speak for myself. I'm extremely light sensitive. Pretty much if you see me during the summer, outdoors, I'm going to have sunglasses on, because if I don't, I'll get a headache. I'm just light sensitive in that way. Highly sensitive people will tend to have those, a good example is someone who has some level of autism, and the sounds or the energies just jangle them too much. They don't know how to filter, and filtering to me is a big part of that. All right, that's why I can deal with sunglasses, they filter, all right, where my eyes do not.
But an empath, which is actually a very metaphysical term, that term is not really used outside of the metaphysical community. And the concept of empath comes along with the idea that you not only are aware of someone else's emotions or feelings, and I'm going to give you a whole list of things that can fall under empath in just a minute, but that you are actually feeling their feelings. So it's almost like you said, there's no boundary, there's no line between you and me.
Right. You
share your story, and I'm feeling your story. I'm re-experiencing what you tell me.
If you've ever been if you're a reader, I know not a lot of people are anymore, but if you're a reader and you find yourself caught up in the novel, perhaps that you're reading, and you're experiencing the life, or a movie, it's the same thing. If you get caught up in the movie, that is a form of being an empath. You're feeling with the characters. You're incorporating, you're internalizing, right?
Mm-hmm. So there's lots of great books out there for empaths. This is one that I like, called The Empathic Experience. And she has a list of things that says if you have any of these, not all of them, but any of these, you probably are to some degree an empath. I will tell you that highly sensitive people, the psychologist that wrote that book says that it's about 15 to 20% of the population are highly sensitive to sounds, noises, emotions, feelings, and that most empaths have some degree of high sensitivity. They would fall on the scale of highly sensitive person in some way. So it's kind of a combination. And so it's the empath experience, what to do when you feel everything. Okay, so some empaths are actually not able to function. It's hard to function because they feel everything very, very deeply. So let me just go real quick, and I was going to read a couple of, why you put a bookmarker in, right? Dun, dun, dun.
Or heaven forbid, dog ear a page.
A couple of things here that says, how do you know if you're an empath? And I'm just going to read the highlights, okay? And so use this as a checklist of common indicators to see how you self-identify as empath. So number one, you feel other people's pain. Now this can be physical, emotional, spiritual, whatever, but that, as you were saying, you actually feel with them. You're feeling their actual emotions. And so you gave an example of therapy.
Yes. I'm actually going to go away from that example.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to go back to, but when you do seances, okay, and you're giving a reading for someone, you'll say, I'm feeling a pressure in my chest, or I'm feeling it. And what it is you're picking up on the feeling, literally, of the person who's passed. But when we're doing it like in therapy, if I'm working with someone, or even in the breath work, I will feel the tension in your body. That's how I know where my hands know where to go. When I work with folks who were ritual abuse survivors, one of the somewhat disconcerting things that would happen is as they were sharing their trauma, I would actually be able to hear, taste, and taste is not a nice thing, taste what was going on in their world. If they had blood in their mouth, I was tasting the iron of the blood, that type of thing. That is a true empath. Now, where we're talking about some of this tonight is you may also be that level of an empath, but you've learned how to say, okay, this taste is not mine, it's theirs, and you know that boundary,
Right.
that difference.
And we'll get to how to do that in
Yeah.
just a minute. So another one on the list is you can read the energy or vibe of a room before you even enter the space. Or once you walk in the space, you can feel the energy of the room, the chaos, the peace, the whatever in the space or the room or the people. You have a powerful emotion, even to the degree it makes you feel enormously uncomfortable to TV, movies, or theatrical performances. So now you have people who aren't really having that emotion, right? They're acting in a TV or a movie or on stage, but as an empath, you're taking it in. So I found that, and I know I mentioned this in our book, but I found that as a child, when someone would die on screen, I would just cry and sob because I thought they died. I mean, I was right there in the TV show or the movie. I still, to this day, and I will just say for me, since this is one of the ones that's strong for me, I can't imagine, I know there's a lot of empaths out there that watch horror flicks and read mystery novels and horror novels and watch man's inhumanity to man or to animals, and they're fine with all that. I can't do that. For me, I cannot watch that kind of stuff. I'll have nightmares, it'll affect me, I can't do it. So that for me is a boundary or a line I draw. So if somebody's like, oh, have you seen the latest Friday the 13th movie? I'm like, I don't watch that. And it's not there's anything wrong with it, but for me it's too intense. I can't separate. I know that's one of the issues I have. I can't separate that, so my choice is to not watch it. Right?
Agreed.
So yeah, the next one. You have taken on other people's illnesses or physical maladies. So some empaths they call them physical empaths, and they actually take on the physical illness of someone else. Now in a seance, I can feel it in my body. I know how they died, I know what happened, but I don't hold it and take it on because I know it's not mine. And that's part of that boundary, is to know what's yours and what's not yours.
And this is one that a lot of young healers fall prey to, because basically a lot of us who are empaths are going to get into the healing arts, whether it's massage or counseling or energy work or whatever. And as someone who's trained a lot of those folks, one of the things that I notice is they come in, they've worked on a client, the client leaves, and now they're feeling what the client felt, whether it's an emotion or even a physical pain. And what I've always said, and I will say this forever, is if you are a healer and you leave a session and you think that person dumped something on you, you are incorrect. What you have done is you have connected with them, felt what was going on with them, and it has connected to something inside of you. It is not their stuff anymore, it is now yours. And this is about part of becoming a mature empath.
Is realizing what's yours and what's not yours.
Right.
All right, the next one. You experience intense exhaustion, especially after spending time with an individual or a group that feels immensely draining of your energy.
I think that would be intense exhaustion.
Did I say what I said?
Intent.
Oh, intensely. Intense exhaustion, sorry. Yeah, so I think probably everybody that's watching this or that's in the room have gone to a party or gone into a group of people or had lunch with somebody, and when you left you were just exhausted and you just feel like you're drained. And I know we go into energy vampires, and the book does as well, but you have to be a willing participant.
Right.
You have to allow that to happen. Again, we talk
You have
all
to-
the time about the fact that you are in control of your own self.
Just remember, you had to invite Dracula in if you're gonna let the vampire in.
Right.
They can't come in without the invitation. The same is true with what we call energy vampires. It's your invitation that allows them to
Or
feed
your,
on your energy,
or
shall
your
we
lack
say.
of boundaries, your
Right.
lack of knowing how, which is why we're
Correct.
talking about this, is
Correct.
how do you set good boundaries, and how do you do it so that they can't, drain you? Because again, it isn't about them. They aren't actively doing it because they're mean or nasty people. Matter of fact, they're probably not even conscious of it. It's unconscious on their part, and you have to be the one that's conscious and say, you know, no, this is the line. Your energy stays there. My energy stays here. I'm not taking it on. I'm not gonna let you grab my energy, you know, and all that. But again, I don't know anybody. I'm sure maybe somebody out there who actively goes, ooh, I'm gonna run around and grab energy from people. I'm gonna be an energy vampire and I'm gonna snatch energy from everybody.
They're usually not that conscious.
Right, it's usually not that way. It's usually people who have no idea what's happening. They
Right.
just need energy and you happen to have it.
Right.
It's not a malicious thing.
Well, think of a hummingbird. It just sees a flower and gets nectar.
Right.
They're sort of like a hummingbird rather than a vampire. You're the flower, you have the nectar, they see it available, they take it. All right, now most flowers are willing to share, and even all of us are willing to share to a certain extent. Where they move from hummingbird to vampire is when they drain the entire flower and leave it as a husk. Nature doesn't do that. The other part of that, though, is you talk about parties and
Mhm.
large gatherings.
Mhm.
I am one of those, I do not get energized by parties. As a matter of fact, and I've talked to folks about, I don't like large crowds and large gatherings for this reason. And for me, it's not that I feel like it's taking energy from me, it's that I'm putting so much energy into, shall we call it a shield, to stay insulated from all of that. And because as an empath, if I'm around 100 people, the problem is I'm picking up on every energy in there. And if I don't keep that shield tight, I'm processing that energy. I can look at you and go, okay, you're feeling depressed, or wow, this is what's happening here. And I don't really want that. If I'm at a party, I don't care about that.
I wanna turn down the faucet.
Right.
I wanna turn that down, my ability down.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
tune it out. But it takes so much
It does take
energy
energy
for me
to hold that, right.
to hold that by the time I get away from the party and get home, I just wanna go, ugh, please leave me alone for 3 days. Right?
To recoup, right.
Yes.
All right, you know when other people are lying. That's definitely not everybody that's an empath can do that, but some can. That's one of the, like I said, not all of these things you have to be an empath. If you have a couple of them, you probably qualify as an empath. But if you can have somebody share something with you and you know right away they're either omitting something, leaving something out, not being honest about something, and you are reading them in essence very quickly, then you're probably tapping into their energy and you're aware that they're lying.
And it may not be that they're lying to you.
No.
They may be lying to themselves.
Yeah.
All right?
Right. And sometimes it's through omission. There are times when we've met with people here at the center and they've told us about themselves and they leave and we look at each other and go,
They left something out.
something's not right here. There's some piece that they didn't tell us, and then later we find out, right? So that's being empathic as well. All right, as we mentioned, one of the things which is also a highly sensitive person is sensitivity to noises or light, and we kind of talked about that one already. The next one is you find yourself feeling incredibly healed and restored by nature or time alone, more than anybody else you know. So there is something called introvert-extrovert.
Right.
And a introvert and extrovert can actually look the same at a party, as you were saying, but the introvert has to go home and be quiet by themselves, you know, and rejuvenate, whereas the extrovert, when they leave the party, is like excited and has energy. So that comes out of Myers-Briggs, introvert, extrovert. But this is actually talking a little bit more, I think, about the fact that if an empath needs that more than the average person. They need the time alone, they need the time with nature, they need the time to meditate, to regroup, you know, to just be peaceful. That they really, really care about that energy of peace, and we're creating that in their house and creating that in their environment, so that when they leave that chaotic situation, they have like a respite, place they can go.
You know that sense of peace you feel when you walk in our front doors here at Intelikia? That's
we need that.
very intentional.
We need that.
That is us setting this energy to hold it, because we don't deal well with chaos. I mean, we deal beautifully with it, but we don't enjoy it.
Right. And then one more thing that may or may not apply. It says, you have learned at a young age to not say what you're really feeling, to avoid making other people uncomfortable. And that really has more to do with the fact that when you meet somebody, you can see the truth about them very quickly. And you feel the truth about them. And empaths, just like the clairs in psychic world, sometimes they feel things more emotionally, sometimes they, as you said, can taste things, see things, hear things. Sometimes it's a combination of those things. But basically an empath, if they don't have good tools, takes on is basically the gist of the definition. You're taking on, you're sensing more than most people, and you take it on as though it's yours.
Well, and a lot of times, and you know, because if we're an empath, you were an empath as a child, all right? So the first thing that all children, by the way, are pretty empathic, all right? They will pick up what is going on with mom and dad or whoever their caretaker is. As a matter of fact, as a therapist, one of the things that I've said for years is I will not see a child alone before the age of puberty. I want to see the parents, because whatever that child is doing, it's running off the parents' energy. Right? So we need to deal with the parents and shift their energy in order for the child to shift, because they don't understand the boundaries between the two. And most of us as empaths, mom is really the primary for a lot of us. So we learned to make mom happy. We were very sensitive to what were her needs. So didn't do whatever it was we didn't want her to do. Those type of things.
Yeah, mom and dad are main caretakers, or whoever that is for you.
Yes.
Definitely. Yeah, so that's kind of what an empath is. So you may have identified yourself in some of those characteristics. You may have had a few of them that apply to you, but not all of them. But basically, again, now the question is, now what? So now I know that I'm an empath. I kind of already knew that before this talk.
I'm guessing you wouldn't be here if you didn't know that.
Right.
So.
But what do I do about it? How do I live? Because you can't live with sensory overload. You can't live being bombarded by everybody's emotion you walk by in the shopping mall, right?
And our society, this society doesn't really support you into withdrawing into a cave and, you know, not interacting.
So one of the things is just self-care. So taking care of yourself, doing nice things for yourself, getting into nature, or sitting at home and reading a book, or drinking a cup of tea, or listening to peaceful, calming music. Things that help you feel better.
Right, and that's the key. Things that help you feel better. Right, self-care, please hear the first part of that is self. Right, so I'm sorry, sitting in a bubble bath with candles around me is not self-care for me.
It might be for me.
It might be for you. All right. For me, self-care is probably more likely going out we've got some property up in Oklahoma. For me, it's going out there into the woods, cutting branches, hauling leaves. But I'm focused on nature. I'm focused on what I'm doing. And all I'm hearing when I'm doing that is the wind in the trees, the birds in the trees, the animals rustling along. That's, to me, is self-care. You could stick me in that bathtub for 3 years, all I'd show up is wrinkled, you know, still stressed.
So figure out what self-care means to you, and then make a list of those things. And when you are feeling overwhelmed, get that list out and start doing some of them.
And make the list. What are the things that bring you joy? What are the things that bring you peace? Because when you're stressed out, when you're overwhelmed, you forget. And if you've got it, you go, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Oh, I can't do that right now, but I can go have a cup of hot tea and then go,
Right.
take a 15-minute break and then go back to work.
Right.
Right?
And having a variety of things like
variety
that.
of
Some things
tools.
that you could do really quickly,
Right.
like at a break at work, and
Right.
some things that might take a little bit longer, or that you'd have to go like away for a weekend or something for. So quite a variety of things that you could do for
Right.
self-care.
One of the other things I am not a practice person. When I played sports, I hated practice, but I love the game, so I understand that some of you may not be practice people, but practice is what makes it easy when you need it. Right, so take the time to practice. One of the things that we've just added here at Intelekia is we now have a game called Wild Divine, and it is more of a biofeedback training device. And you sit on our computer, you put a little clip on your ear, and basically it teaches you to match your heart rate and breath rate to something that's on the screen. And as you maintain heart rate variability of about 75 to 95%, what happens is the game opens doors, it flies kites, it does all these sorts of things. You keep practicing that, you now begin to know what it feels like to be in that range. And so when you get stressed, you know to go, and it automatically starts your body dropping away from the stress and the tension that you felt.
And self-care can just be that, where
It can
you
just
take
be
a
that.
minute and you do like 4 or 5 slow, deep breaths, because that's all you have time for, and then you go back to whatever it was you were doing. So it can be as simple as that, and as complex as going away for a weekend.
So the other part of self-care, and it's moving into personal insight as well, is boundaries.
What I wanted to say before you head there is,
Sure.
I want to call back to what you mentioned, in that sometimes we feel somebody else's emotion because it's an emotion we haven't dealt with yet.
Right.
Something inside of us that we haven't cleared. And so that's why you were saying that, to me, that's also personal insight. That's why I was saying when you started that if somebody's really angry and you're near them and you leave and you become very angry, you could go, oh, they dumped their anger on me. No, there's probably something inside of you where you need to express your own anger or unresolved anger or issues about anger that you need to look at, because the reason why you took that on so much is because you have unresolved issues about anger inside. So when we come to the part of personal insight, there's a bunch of different things involved. It's a little more complicated, but one thing is to ask yourself, so when we go someplace, let's say we get home and I sit down and I'm like, man, I'm feeling really anxious. And I have to sit down, center myself, look inside and go, is this my anxiety over something? Or is this something I picked up at the restaurant or the activity or event we went to? And I have to determine, first of all, is it mine or is it someone else's, or is it someone else's that triggered mine? Right? And then I have to look and process and figure out what that is. But along those lines, the boundaries is a great
Right, well,
thing.
you just described boundaries, basically. Is it mine? Is it something that I picked up from someone else, therefore it's not mine and I can simply set it aside? Or is it something that has that I picked up that triggered something, which does make it mine, which means now I have to deal with it. The other thing is, we're all going to deal with other people all day long, every day. That's it, unless you're in that cave. And you're dealing with bugs probably, but anyway. But basically what it is our boundaries do not need to be a brick wall. All right, if we use the old Pink Floyd, another brick in the wall, all that does is put you inside of a prison, doesn't affect anybody out there. So it needs to be permeable boundaries. Think of it more like a chain link fence, all right? If it's a mad dog coming at the fence, it's gonna hit the fence and not get to you. But if it's a kitten that can come right through the fence or over the fence, it can get to you. It just depends. You wanna let those things through because you want full flow with your boundaries.
Right. And learning how to have good boundaries and what that means is very, very important. And how to have those permeable boundaries rather than those rigid boundaries. And that's just practice.
And it begins with knowing who you are. Where do I begin and where does the other person end? Right, it's the old joke I learned as a kid that your rights end where my nose begins. All right, it's a little more than that, but basically, what is mine? I have to get to know me. All of life is really about helping us uncover the who we are behind the ego that walks around all day. Okay? So with boundaries, once you begin to know, okay, this is who I am, this is how I function, this is what I think, this is what I believe, then you can begin to go back in. This is the personal insight part. All right, wait a minute, is that really what I believe, or is this something that I've learned from mom, dad, minister, boss, uncle, whoever, that really doesn't apply to me? And I have to come back and look at that. If it's not mine, let it go. You don't need it. It's not a functional belief for you. If it's functional for you, keep it, own it, make it yours.
And some people can do that with just self-inquiry. Others, journaling is real helpful to kind of sort out what's yours and what's not. Sometimes if you have a friend you can talk to and bounce stuff off of, that's helpful as well. But it really is that personal. The more you know about yourself, the more you know what is you, the more you know what isn't you.
Right.
And so then you can go, I know myself, in my example about anxiety, I'm not an anxious person. Anxiety is not an issue I have. I'm feeling anxious. Maybe I picked up on someone else in that restaurant's anxiety and I need to think it and send it on. And then that's the next part. When you realize something's not yours, you just say, this isn't mine, I don't need this, thank you very much, you can, and be released, and just release it. You can do it in a visualization, you can do it in just words, you can do it as you write, if you journal, but a way to just release what isn't yours. You don't have to send it back to whoever it was, you just release it, energy.
Release it back to source.
Right, emotions are just energy in motion. And so you just release it back to source, you release it back to the flow. And that this isn't mine, I don't need it, I leave it and send it back. And I do that sometimes. There's a couple different visualizations. So a couple tools I want to give you are a few visualizations. One is that. So you can close your eyes, you can have your eyes open, whatever you want, but you see like whatever this is, a ball of emotion, a ball of energy that you know isn't yours. So we'll use that anxiety thing that I just, example. So I know I'm not an anxious person. Rusty and I, in our little scenario here, just went somewhere like a restaurant. We're coming home and I'm feeling really anxious all of a sudden. And there's no reason for me to feel anxious. Nothing's changed. So then I go inside and I feel my own emotions. I know I'm not an anxious person, so I take what feels like anxiety and make a little ball, visualize a ball with it, and then pull it out of me and then release it into the cosmos. Let it just go like a balloon. Maybe you lift up, or something that flies away, or whatever visualization you want. So take the emotion that isn't you, the experience, the feeling, and move it on. You have any other suggestions?
Sure.
Go for it.
One of the other things that works for me a lot of times is if I've been out in a crowd, in a social setting. And by the way, for me, a crowd is more than about 10 people. But if I've been in that setting, what I may feel is like there's a lot of built up static in my own energy field. And it's just, and free floating anxiety is one word for that, but it can just be, just wonky. It's another way for me to describe it. So I'm feeling that in my field. I know it's not really mine. So what I will tend to do is I will just, and you can do this right now, just sit in your chair, take a deep breath, and as you exhale, just feel your tailbone going down into the earth. And with each breath, just drive that tailbone, that root chakra, deeper and deeper into the earth. And once you feel that it's got good depth, whatever that means for you, the next breath you just allow all that static, all that to drain out through your tailbone into the earth. And just feel yourself literally grounding into the earth. A lot of time empathic overload is just being ungrounded. Okay? Now, when you're ready, breathe and bring your tailbone back out of the earth. But notice how different you may feel even from a very short time of that exercise. Grounding is probably one of the better tools that an empath can use. And again, it's going to be different for each of us. I can do that exercise. I can also walk out and just lean on a tree.
Right. Nature
Right.
can do that for people.
Yeah, nature
And a lot of
does
people
that.
are into earthing where they walk barefoot in parks and
Right.
things like that. But yeah, it's something where you feel more grounded.
Right. It's
To bring
about
you back to
literally.
who you are and in your own body.
Yes.
Right. Another thing that I do sometimes is when we've been at a party or an event, I feel like there's just too much coming at me all at once. And so you mentioned the shield kind of thing. Again, I want to still be able to be a little permeable, maybe not as much as a chain link fence, but because I still want to interact with people and be able to feel like, you know, I'm a nice person and they feel that and I feel them. But I don't want to pick up all the other garbage, all the other stuff going on. So you can visualize literally a bubble of like white crystal around you, just a white bubble around your body. And you can, before you walk in the room, you know you're going in that party, before you walk in the room, when you sit in your car or when you're right before you open the door, just do a quick visualization and you just see like this white bubble all the way around you and you just hold that picture kind of in the back of your mind and as you go through the party. So that kind of helps it not kind of get to you. Another thing is the zip up.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about that one?
Sure. You want me to demo it or do you want me to just talk about it?
Just talk about it.
Okay. The energy zip up. It's really simple.
Your head's going to go out of the screen.
Oh, my head's going on the screen. Well, I'll sit down then. I don't need to be the headless speaker.
You'll be a headless speaker here in a minute.
But basically, your energy field that is around you can become unzipped, right, or open. All you have to do is go right about here and just go and zip up.
Like a zipper, like you're
a
zipping
zipper.
up a zipper.
And you can block it and throw the key away, not necessary, but you can just zip up. This is actually a martial arts technique. If you've ever watched the martial art movies, you know they go like that. Well, what that does is by doing that to the other person, you just unzip them. Their energy field is open, they're not as strong, they're not as sovereign as they are if they're zipped. So you notice one goes this way and the other guy goes this way, with it to zip himself back up, to hold the chi, to hold the energy, to hold integrity.
And you can do that with a zipper like you did, you can do that just with a hand, and you can also do that just with your mind once you practice it. You can just with your mind kind of see the zipper zipping up so that you're not open and vulnerable to all the energies coming around. For me, when I go to a party or an event and I come home and I'm feeling like just still overwhelmed by everything that took place or what I picked up, I do kind of a white tornado. We'll call it a tornado. And what I do is I see the tornado swirling around my body, and it's just a visualization, where you see the tornado swirling, doesn't matter what direction, swirling around your body and collecting inside of that tornado all of those energies that are not yours. Okay? So you visualize this tornado going and going and going, and you can use your hand. I like to use my hand, and I make like the circle to help me visualize the tornado going around my whole body and my energy field, collecting all the gunk that doesn't belong to me. And then I send it off. And I suggest that you make a snap, or you make like that, because that sound is kind of a way to like close the door. Like send it off and close the door, or send it off and finalize it. So I go around, and then I send it off. And you do that to yourself. I also do that in my home if I feel like the energies I brought home, not only entities or things like that, but whatever I brought home from the party that aren't me, and I need to go that little tornado around the house, and then I just kind of go like that, and I clear the house if I'm feeling that the energies are with me in the house. So I went a little bit different because the external energies is another topic, but if I'm not feeling centered and grounded, and I'm not feeling sovereign in my own energy, that's a way for me to just have a quick visualization to feel more clear and clean in who I am.
Well, let us be very clear about one thing. Being an empath is a gift,
Right.
even though it does not always feel like it. It truly becomes a gift once you learn the boundaries and how to set those and how to distinguish what's yours and what's not, and leave what's not alone.
Right, because then you know things people don't know.
Right.
I know if somebody's lying, and you don't know I know that as you continue to lie to me, right? I know that even though you're smiling, you feel depressed or sad or anxious. I can feel that and sense it enough to be aware of the scenario and sit what's happening and not take it on.
And the reason this is actually very important right at this time is because as the energies are shifting and as we are sort of ramping up, we're all reclaiming those empathic abilities again. We really are. So it's going to become more, and if you've been an open empath your entire life, it's just getting more intense. So you really need these tools. If it's the first time that you felt it since you were a child, oh my God, what do I do with this? That's why we're talking about this. Things are shifting. We are having to create those boundaries. We are having to trust that intuition. And to being an empath and looking at someone and going, okay, they're not a bad person, but I don't want to be around them, is a phenomenal gift.
Well, that their energy doesn't resonate
Doesn't
with
match.
me. It
It's
doesn't
not the-
match. It's not a match for me.
Right, it's not the energy I want to be around or run. Right.
All right, so thank you so much for joining us for this
Yeah.
talk. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back and do some Q&A.